With the presidential campaign season upon us and the corporate-aligned two-party duopoly dominating the conversation taking place in American media, nothing says change like another Bush or Clinton in the White House. In turn, the media is selling candidates whose agendas don't disrupt the status quo. In this winner-take-all system, voters are left to choose between the lesser of two evils. And Americans are growing weary of this elite political system that does not truly represent us, the people. Indeed, according to a recent Gallup poll, over 58% of Americans believe a third U.S. party is needed because the Republican and Democratic parties, quote-unquote, do such a poor job at representing the American public. From supporting endless war, crony capitalism, the Orwellian police state, apartheid in Israel, and much more, the establishment that drives these policies is not only ignoring the cries for an alternative that will bring about real change and real peace, but it's purposely excluding those third-party candidates out. As the fight for a viable alternative rages on, one woman announced her presidential campaign for a second round on the Green Party ticket. And no, her name isn't Bush or Clinton, it's Dr. Jill Stein. She says her platform prioritizes people, the planet, and peace over profits. But what exactly does that mean, and how does that compare to other candidates who say they will bring about real change this time around? Joining me earlier was Dr. Jill Stein herself, whom I had the pleasure of speaking with about all of this and more. Take a look. So thank you so much, Jill, for joining me today. I appreciate it. Your campaign is centered around a platform that claims to put people, the planet, and peace over profits. What does that mean in terms of reforming U.S. foreign policy that is so driven by endless war?
Endless war goes together with an economy based on profiteering, basically exploiting human resources and natural resources. So we don't have really a Department of Defense. We have a Department of Offense whose purpose, whose really driving vision is that of total economic and military domination. We have wars for oil and we have wars for markets, basically. And we have 700 military bases around the world where we basically have no business being. We are now spending about twice as much on our military as we did prior to 2001. And we have not made the world more secure or more democratic or more friendly to the cause of human rights or women's rights or anything else. And we've spent some $4 to $6 trillion over the past decade, basically making the world a more explosive place. Clearly, it's time to go back to the drawing boards and have a foreign policy that's founded on human rights, international law, and diplomacy. War and violence basically has created more war and violence when there have been many opportunities to address violence and terrorism and so on at its root causes by basically pitting warlords against each other, which is essentially the strategy that the U.S. has put to work in Iraq and Afghanistan and in Libya, and in Syria. We have seen exactly what that leads to, which is greater political vacuum and the creation of even more vicious and violent political forces. So we need to break this cycle of worsening political violence and extremism and begin to have a foreign policy that draws us together and builds coalitions around, basic human rights, international law, and using the forces of finance, of cutting off oil sales on the black market, of stopping the flow of militias across borders, the borders controlled by our supposed allies, and pouring our weapons into this cauldron where they just move freely from those who are supposed to be our friends to the hands of our worst enemies. So there are many solutions here. They are not rocket science. We need a foreign policy that's not driven by basically promoting U.S. weapons sales and U.S. arms industry to a policy that's actually working on behalf of people, planet, and peace. It is within our hands and within our reach.
And speaking of, the economy and a peace economy and war, let's talk about other candidates like Bernie Sanders, who claim they work for the 99% and not the oligarchy. Yet people like him are running on the Democratic ticket. What do you have to say about him and people like him and their platform?
Yes, and Bernie Sanders certainly stands out in that he is addressing many of the critical issues that are also priorities in our campaign around economic inequality and, exploitation. But there are critical differences. One is that we're going to be there for the long haul. The Green Party candidate, which I hope very much to be, will not basically pack it in after the primary. We have a party that actually supports this vision as opposed to the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders has already endorsed Hillary Clinton or whoever the Democratic candidate will be, whichever corporate candidate is going to be selected by this corporate process. And in fact, we've seen through Barack Obama's administration what a supposed progressive can accomplish even if they get elected. Barack Obama, who created the appearance of supporting so many of these progressive policies, completely threw in the towel when he was elected, even despite having 2 Democratic houses of Congress. So one needs to be very suspicious about what you think can be done within the Democratic Party. And there are several models for what happens to these kind of, supposedly idealistic campaigns inside the Democratic Party. At the end of the day, they pledge allegiance to the corporate Democrat. Repeating again, this is what Bernie Sanders has already done on primetime TV. They pledge allegiance, and then the resources of their campaign, basically, and the vision of their campaign gets folded into a political party run by the oligarchy, which is extremely hostile to that vision. So campaigns like Jesse Jackson's and Dennis Kucinich and Al Sharpton, while they may have had some very principled driving forces, at the end of the day, they disappear without a trace, and the Democratic Party just keeps marching to the right. So we think it's a good time for those people who are considering, trying to push the Democratic Party from the inside. Let's not keep repeating the same mistakes of the past 20 years. We need a party that is truly of, by, and for the people, that is not controlled by the big money behind closed doors, that will basically sabotage those efforts. Let's keep building on this good thing that we got going outside of the Democratic Party, and I urge people to come to my website, jill2016.com, and become part of this enduring solution.
And, I understand you're part of a lawsuit that is actually suing the Federal Election Commission to open up debates to independent candidates, which is so insane to think that you have to actually sue them for that to even happen. Tell me more about this case and why alternative candidates are excluded.
Well, the case is doing exactly what you said. We're suing the Commission on Presidential Debates for basically rigging the debates. And if you rig the debates, you've basically rigged the election. It's one of many ways, actually, in which the election gets rigged, but it's a very important way. And the Commission on Presidential Debates is assumed by most Americans to be nonpartisan and to be operating basically on essential principles of informing the American public who their choices are. But it's actually a private nonprofit corporation run by the Democratic and Republican parties, and their express purpose is to limit the debate to Democrats and Republicans only. And the American people have gone on record over and over again, nearly 60% in most recent polls are clamoring for a third-party option, saying that the Democratic and Republican parties have done such a bad job serving the needs of the people that we need something else. So why not give the American people what they are hungering for? And when the League of Women Voters was basically kicked out back in the 1970s, they went on record saying that the Commission on Presidential Debates is basically a fraud being perpetrated on the American public. So we are essentially suing them to comply with the law. The law says that the debates must be nonpartisan. That's not bipartisan, that's nonpartisan, because there's a very different point of view that most Americans actually share and are demanding. And I'll just share with you one very compelling, experience that made this point to me when I was first tricked into running for office in 2002. When I ran for governor against Mitt Romney and others, we made a lot of noise and actually got into a televised debate. And inside of that debate, I gave voice to the things that I'm hearing from everyday Americans all the time. We should have a right to health care as a human right, a right to quality public education, and we advocate through college. There should be free college. We should be downsizing the military and spending our dollars here at home where we can create true security. We need to respect the rights of the immigrant community and greening the economy to address the crisis of climate change. Those were the things I advocated for back in 2002 in that debate, which was televised and taking place in a TV studio. Those ideas went over like lead balloons, as you can imagine, among the other candidates and the moderator. But when we walked out into the waiting press, I was mobbed for the first time and the last time by the press, who told me that I had won the debate on the instant online viewer poll. And you can imagine that was the last time they did an instant online viewer poll during a debate. And they do their best to keep us out. So my point is simply that the American public is already there. We don't have to persuade people. History has changed people's minds. The public is in a very progressive, proactive mood right now, clamoring for change. If we put that change out in front of people in a debate, hold on to your hat. I think all bets are off about where it might go.
And it definitely sounds like a people-powered campaign, as you're saying. But, for those people who say, if they vote third party, it's a wasted vote. What do you say to them? How do you respond to that?
Well, there's no greater waste of a vote than to keep voting for the two political parties that are throwing you under the bus. And they are clearly doing that. And the Democratic Party, look at its track record. When Barack Obama was elected and we were in an incredible economic crisis, and Democrats had both houses of Congress. He gave away the store, trillions in bailouts to the bankers, allowed the foreclosure crisis to continue unabated with millions of people losing their homes, continued expanding the wars, the attack on civil liberties, massively expanded the war on immigrants with deportations and family separations, allowed students to go into deeper debt than ever. So it's clear the two parties are not going to do it for us. We need to reject that politics of fear that tells us we have to seal our lips and let the corporate parties do it for us. There's no way, no how they're going to do it for us. We have a choice between a party of people in the planet or a party of privilege and power. This is the difference between the Green Party as a third party of integrity and the Democratic and Republican parties. So we're saying it's time to throw out this lesser evil, time to start standing up for the greater good. We need to lead the way. The corporate political parties are not going to do that. And they seek to intimidate us precisely because we have so much power. Currently, there are 40 million young people, millennials, who are in debt due to college education. They're students now, or they were. 40 million people could come out to vote green in the presidential election in 2016 to abolish debt. They could come out to abolish debt, and my campaign is the only one that is saying, we're not just going to change the terms of your repayment plan, which is what even Bernie Sanders is saying. We're saying we're going to abolish that debt, as well as making public higher education free. If 40 million students came out determined to do that, that alone could determine the outcome of the election in a three-way race. 40 million people is enough to win it. So it's time for us to reject the propaganda of powerlessness, to stand up with the true power that we have, understanding that whether we win the office or not, we can win the day and lay the groundwork for many wins in our local communities. We can empower those races and those challenges at all levels of government and lay the groundwork for winning all offices, eventually, including turning the White House into a greenhouse. This power is in our hands. We need to step up and use it. Go to our website, jill2016.com, and join the revolt.
And you're right. I mean, if over 50% of Americans believe that the Democrats and Republicans don't actually work for them, just imagine if they followed their heart and went and voted for a third-party candidate, whether it be Green Party or Libertarian Party, what kind of statement that would send. Thank you so much, Jill, for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Good to see you again, and hopefully we'll hear more from you soon, and best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mnar. Look forward to talking.